Hello and welcome to a brief video lecture that I've prepared for you with my comments and concerns on your rough draft of the employment packet. I wanted to go through a few slides and talk about my comments and concerns. Originally I was planning on also looking at your various drafts, pulling them up on screen and talking about them, but I reviewed a similar video lecture that I had created a couple of years ago when I was away from class, and it seemed awfully tedious, and so I'm just going to go through these slides, and then we'll talk more about things in class on Tuesday, and then we'll work toward a final draft by the end of next week. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so in terms of the letter, which you might refer to as cover letter, letter of application, or letter of transmittal. Basically, I'm looking for 4 paragraphs, at least 4 paragraphs, and with your introductory paragraph, certain things that you need to do. You need to state that you want to be considered an applicant for the position. You need to identify the specific job title, and the introductory paragraph needs to forecast the rest of the letter somehow, typically by mentioning your education and employment experience and how that positions you well as an applicant, and then that indicates that you're going to talk about your education and your employment. So those will be the next 2 paragraphs, an education paragraph, an employment paragraph. If you have some more stuff you want to talk about, you can add another paragraph or 2, but I definitely wanted to see those 2 paragraphs. And then in the conclusion, you're supposed to make a polite but confident request for an interview. Some other general comments. The letter should be full block or modified block, and that's detailed in chapter 14 of our text. It should be signed in some way, so I mentioned putting the word signed in angle brackets, or typing your name. You have to type it twice. You're supposed to type sincerely and hit the enter key 4 times, or 4 spaces, and then type your name. But then in between, you're supposed to sign, and so in between you could type your name again and then highlight it and put it in a scripty looking font. That'll be fine. So another point, if the letter extends beyond 1 page, we need to make sure we get at least 2 lines of the last paragraph onto the second page, so that we don't just have the sincerely, the complimentary close by itself. So, and in order to do that, if you need to, you can go up, and remember, some of that spacing before and after the date is flexible, and so you could add some extra spacing or take away some spacing. And in terms of the greeting, I've advised you not to say "to whom it may concern." Try to find out the name of the person you're sending it to. If you can't find the name, use a title like Dear Personnel Director, Dear Human Resources Director, or a collective noun such as Dear Hiring Committee, so that we're addressing it to someone as specifically as we can, rather than the more generic "to whom it may concern." So also at the end of the greeting, we need to use a colon for professional business correspondence. Typically use a comma for personal correspondence, so make sure you're doing that. Okay, and moving on. In terms of your resume, there are 2 standard formats: the 2-column or single-column design. The 2-column design has the headings over in the left-hand column, a much narrower column, and then the content for those sections over in the wider main column. And typically a 2-column design is used when you're trying to fill up more space, and a single-column design is used when you're trying to not make the resume so long. So depends on your situation. Okay, and then recommended sections. You need to have your identifying information at the top. So name, address, email. The LinkedIn address can go up there, or it can go, some people put it in a footer down at the bottom. Okay, and make your name big up there, larger than 12-point type. The objective statement, a lot of people use that, but I'm not sure of the exact effectiveness of it, so I would consider it optional. I've never used it myself. Typically, you should have your education and then your employment section. But as I noted, that a lot of the templates that you find on Microsoft Word, they seem to have reversed this and put employment ahead of education. So either way, I will accept. Um, and then you can fill in with some additional sections, and our text talks about those. They also talk about how to improve your education section, add some more information, relevant courses taken, GPA, that kind of thing. Since you haven't graduated yet, you'll say anticipated graduation and then list the semester after that. You can also talk about a project you did as a student. Talk about honors and awards there, or you can have a separate honors and awards section. Employment, you need to have the name of the company, the position. I'd probably put position, name of the company, and dates of employment. Either or, with either the job position first and then the company, or the company and then the job position. And a lot of people like to put the dates over to the far right, and I'll show you guys in class how to set up a right-aligned tab stop to do that. It's better than just hitting the space bar and trying to move it over that way. So if you want to elaborate on your employment, there are some good action verbs in chapter 15 of our text, and I tend to say more about my current job and then less about previous jobs that I've had. References, I am looking for a references section, even though you're probably going to only have the content say provided upon request. So in doing so, make sure that references is treated like a header, like all of the other section headers that you have, and then the content will be provided upon request. So I just want to make sure that you're aware that you should be providing this, and if you want to go ahead and have a separate references page, you can do that. As I've said before, that if you say provided upon request and you actually send this out, you should have them ready to go in case they contact you. So, okay, so also reminded you of some principles of document design: proximity, alignment, repetition, and contrast. So proximity, like items, should go together. And sometimes that can affect things like if you have a header that's at the bottom of a page and then the content that goes with it is at the top of the next page, we need to make sure to get that header onto the next page too. We want the text to go together. Along those lines, I think I mentioned it later, but if you think that just hitting the enter key to force it onto the second page is going to be enough, sometimes those headers do jump back onto the first page, so be sure to use a hard page break, and also at the end save your document as a PDF, which will basically take a picture of it, and so it'll look the same on your computer as it does on anyone else's. That can also be helpful if you used a particular typeface that's not widely used, so keep that in mind. Okay, alignment. I notice this a lot in terms of aligning, for instance, bullets and throughout your document, and then also some of these, let's say in your employment section, the job title, the employer, and the dates of employment. We want to make sure we have good alignment on that as well. So repetition or patterning, basically treat each section the same in terms of formatting. So if you have a blank line in between the previous section and then the header for the next section, make sure you do that with each section. So format things consistently throughout. And contrast, the main thing we're worried about is figure ground contrast. Shouldn't be much of an issue, but okay, so those are some thoughts on the resume. And moving on, in terms of the organizational profile, basically about a page of information on the company. And I gave you a suggested template, but it's just a suggestion. Do what works best for you. And if it's just a bulleted list of items, that's fine with me. Toward the bottom, remember those 4 to 5 questions that you could ask during a job interview, and they should be good questions. So, okay, moving on. Your LinkedIn profile. For the final draft, I want to see that you've got a picture in it and that you've made some attempt to start filling out the sections in the profile. And then finally, I'm saying that you could put your address on your resume somewhere, either at the top or the bottom, whatever you want to do. Okay, and then some overall comments for your cover letter and your resume. I encourage you to take an arm's length view of your document. So you could do that by printing it out and looking at it, or you could do the view whole page option in your word processing program, and you can kind of see the top to bottom balance. Are things scooched too much to the top, or is it too bottom heavy? And remember, you can, like on the letter, adjust some of that spacing before and after the date to make it look better. I don't think I said it here, but our text does say generous margins on all sides. So don't try to cram everything onto one page. I'd rather see it be a page and a quarter or a page and a half rather than everything crammed onto one page. So they talk about ample and generous margins. So white space is important. Okay, as I said before, save your final draft of your documents as a PDF. Keeps the text from jumping around. The resume and the letter should look like they belong together, stylistically and design-wise. So sometimes people choose a really funky design for the resume, and then they don't do anything with their letter that remotely resembles the resume. So as much as possible, there should be some unity between the resume and the letter. And in terms of spacing, as I mentioned before, aligning things, we'll talk about using tabs, setting those up, rather than using the space bar. It never works out exactly the way you want it to. So, okay, resume and letter should look like how they would if you were submitting them to an employer. So don't label your document. Sometimes people want to put letter of application or letter of transmittal at the top of the letter, or they want to put a header like their name and the class and my name and the due date. Don't do that. I want to see it exactly as it would look like if you were giving it to an employer. So down at the bottom, I said if you have any additional questions, refer to our text. Chapter 15 is the job application materials. Chapter 14 is letters, memos, and emails, so covers letter writing. And also, as I said before, don't go smaller than 10-point text on any of your documents. And aside from like your name at the top of your letter or the name at the top of your resume, I really wouldn't go any larger than 12-point either. So occasionally on the organizational profile, I'll see students try to give something to me in 14-point type or 16-point type because they're trying to fill out the whole page. So I'll typically take off points for doing that. So don't do that. Okay, so we'll talk more in class on Tuesday. I'll introduce the website analysis memo, talk about memo writing, and about analyzing websites as documents. And then we'll work toward a final draft workshop on Thursday, and then I'll collect the final drafts on D2L by Friday. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon. Thanks.